Draft pick, Jalen Rose. It is a huge night for the NBA in a variety of ways. The draft lottery is tonight in Chicago, and our Malika Andrews will be hosting that coming up at the top of our next hour, and she is standing by with a very special guest. Good evening, Malika.
Good evening, Mike. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I'm here with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Commissioner, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. We're just going to jump right in. It's the fourth year of flattening the lottery odds here, and it's also the second year of the play-in tournament. Now that we're at this point, how would you assess the way that these changes have impacted both tanking and then NBA markets being more invested in their teams farther into the NBA season?
I think it's working well. It's not a sort of perfect sample because of COVID, the pandemic. It started in the bubble in a hybrid form, so in some ways we're in the third year. But initially, it seems to be working really well. Both combination of flattening the odds to disincentivize, obviously, finishing at the bottom. But on top of that, the play-in then creates an incentive to stay competitive. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is that with roughly 2 weeks left in the season, one year we had 25 teams still in contention. Next year we had 24 teams still in contention. So that's what we were really hoping for, particularly a team that has an injury early in the season. Instead of deciding, let's just rebuild, they see an opportunity, they can sneak in and then compete. So relatively early still, but we think it's working well.
So far, so good, so to say. So another big storyline in the league this year has been stars. I'm talking James Harden, Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, essentially using their play as a bargaining chip, right? And there's a sense among teams and ownership that the NBA has a responsibility to handle player availability kind of outside of injuries. I know that CBA talks are coming. You don't necessarily like to negotiate through the media, but what is the responsibility? What changes can be made to these player contracts so that they are upheld? And then also so that the game, the integrity of the game is upheld as well?
It's a great question. I'm not sure there's a silver bullet, meaning if only we had this new language in the player contract, that would solve the problem. It's one that goes back for NBA fans many generations in terms of players holding out, players pushing to get moved to other teams. These are players that have unique talent. They're always going to have leverage. Of course, from a league standpoint, we want teams to honor contracts, we want players to honor contracts. So there's no doubt we'll sit down and talk about it. I know we can do better. I know the players want to do better because it's not an individual sport. So if a player is pushing to move out of a city, it has enormous impact on all those other players, some of whom chose to go to that city as a free agent because that player was there. So I actually think there's a mutual issue, a common concern when there's a problem, but also a mutual issue in fixing this problem, making sure that contracts are fully honored. So we'll sit down and we'll address that with the Players Association.
Something else that we've seen pop up time and time again, unfortunately, over the course of this season is fan aggression towards players. And with this increase in gambling in arenas, we're seeing it play out in real time where fans are literally losing their money while they're watching the game play out on the court. What is the league's responsibility to do or change to further protect their players?
Number one, I'm not sure there is a correlation between increased betting on sports and fan aggression in arenas. I think that's part of a larger societal issue. We're seeing enormous polarization. We're just seeing political discourse, civil discourse. So I see it everywhere I go. And I think in some ways we're a microcosm of that. So we are seeing an uptick of it in our arena. And we have an enormous responsibility, not just to protect our players, but to protect our fans. 99 point whatever % of fans are there to enjoy themselves, to be with their families. The last thing they want to see is hostility directed at them by other fans, or certainly at the players or at our referees. So we've increased security in arenas. We're working with our Players Association just to make sure also that players aren't distracted. I've heard incidents where a player, often their families are there, and the last thing a player is in a competitive game wants to be looking over at his daughter or son sitting in the stands, or a significant other, and see that somehow they're in distress. So that has to be resolved, but it's a bigger issue than just the NBA.
Something else that you and I have talked about several times that has been on the top of mind for folks has been this mid-season tournament. Where are we in terms of any progress that's being made towards that, Commissioner?
In terms of progress, I've shifted from mid-season to in-season. That's a little bit of progress. I think that finding exactly where in the season it makes sense. The current thinking is, as opposed to mid, maybe somewhere early December before the holiday. But we're continuing this idea. In fact, we had a general managers meeting here in Chicago today and talked to them about it, that there should be something else to play for in addition to the Larry O'Brien Trophy. It doesn't mean that we would lessen in any way that desire to win that ultimate goal, to win the championship. But just as other leagues in the world do, particularly international soccer, there are other cups worth pursuing. And a new tradition won't be created overnight, but we think there is an opportunity to create some sort of tournament during our season that would become important for its own sake.
And it sounds like general managers were receptive to that.
Yes, they were very receptive.
Before I let you go, Adam, the league, it has a long and rich history of advocacy, and we've seen this uptick in the WNBA bringing awareness to Brittany Griner's wrongful detainment in Russia, and we've seen it on an individual player level in the NBA, but not so much on the league level. What do you see as the league's role and responsibility in ensuring her safe return to the United States?
Both the WNBA and its brother league, the NBA, we have a huge responsibility to Brittany Griner as one of our players. I mean, part of our decision to not take a higher profile here, frankly, came at the suggestion of experts in and out of government who thought the best path to getting Brittany out was not to amplify the issue. Having said that, there's an enormous role for the public to play through protest or letting their representatives know how badly, how strongly they feel about this. But so we're working now. Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, is on this issue every single day. I'm working side by side with her, but we've been in touch with the White House, the State Department, hostage negotiators, at every level of government, and also through the private sector as well. So our number one priority is her health and safety and making sure that she gets out of Russia.
And that she returns safely. Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. Enjoy this wonderful draft lottery event tonight. Mike, sending it back to you in Miami.
All right, Malika and Commissioner, thank you very much. And again, we're counting it down here to Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, but it's a fascinating conversation, and we were all listening here. Stephen A., what was, to you, the thing that stood out the most from their conversation in Chicago?
Well, to get the obvious out of the way on behalf of all of us, I think we all are hoping and praying that Brittany Griner gets home safe and sound. Our hearts go out to her and her family.
Absolutely.
Every one of us should be doing what we can to assist in getting her back home.
Yes, sir.
Having said all of that, in terms of the other questions that Malika Andrews asked him, the number one thing on my mind was what she brought up as it pertains to player availability, getting these players to play and not miss games. And the bottom line is Adam Silver is not going to get specific, but that I know it's going to be addressed. The owners, the league, the commissioner himself, and everybody in between is going to address this, because the reality is that it is time, not most, not all, but for some of these players to be called out in terms of protecting the integrity of the league they inherited. You make the money that you make because people who came before you grinded and they put in their blood, sweat, and tears literally to be the best that they could be while uplifting and protecting the league and building it for people to follow them. That is not what far too many of these guys have been doing, and the league, the owners themselves, they're all going to address this come hell or high water, and they need to, because we need to see these guys on the court playing basketball.
I have a couple, and Adam Silver is the best commissioner in sports. He eliminated a few words from the lexicon that I liked in basketball. One, super teams. You notice we're not talking about that no more. Why? Because of the rookie pay scale. These guys will take a major haircut if you leave the team that draft you, so you're now seeing those players re-sign. The other one, low management. We're not talking about that either. Why? Because the play-in tournament, he mentioned 24 teams within the last month of the season felt like they were in contention in one way, shape, or form to possibly make the playoffs. Those were two major moves for the league.
And just tonight, there are 3 teams that have equivalent chances, the best chances of winning tonight's draft lottery. That is a change they made, as Malika brought up just a few years ago, that has greatly curbed the idea of a race to the bottom, which used to be a major problem in the sport. Okay, so we have that coming up tonight. Again, the draft lottery will follow us, and then Game 1, and we will see Tyler Herro. They need a hero tonight for Miami.